Okay, sweet. Hey guys, welcome to the seventh edition of Product Hackers. Super keen for this one, but I thought this time it'd be my chance to share my screen and get a presentation going myself. So firstly, I just wanted to say we finally got a meetup group going. So on meetup.com, Product Hackers Australia, please subscribe. I want to get a little bit of discussion going on there, get the events on there, kind of have a single source of truth. Took me 6 weeks, but finally we're here. And also we've got awesome news. All Squares have brought on a community engagement lead. Lockie, jump on, mate. Tell us a little bit about the Funny Podcast business. The Funny Business Podcast, sorry.
Yeah, come on, mate, get it right.
Give us a little bit of a rundown.
Oh, mate, about the podcast or about the first week at All Squares?
Give us the first week.
First week's been amazing, mate. Obviously working alongside people like yourself brightens up my day, mate. So it's been a really good start, man. Honestly, meeting everyone in the All Squares community, all the clients and the candidates and the ecosystem, mate. It's been unreal. It's been a hot start. It's been good. But the Funny Business Podcast, got a podcast out. Started that at the start of COVID in April, and we've just been pumping out 2 to 3 episodes a week. So we get a wide range of different guests. We've even had our very own Hayley Worley from the Sheet Society, who's given a bit of a spiel today. So I'd suggest starting with that episode and giving that a listen.
Yeah. Hey, is the screen still sharing? Just out of curiosity.
Yep.
Yeah, we can just see the sand dunes.
Nice background.
Desert. 1 second. Oh, where are you going? Oh, here we go. Okay. New share, please. Okay, sweet. So what's the community engagement lead, mate? What does that mean?
So it's just making sure I'm connecting with the community, mate. So making sure everyone's happy, finding out market trends, relaying that information, just managing the talent, really. Coming through the All Squares pipeline. So and helping out with a bit of the marketing stuff with the lads there, Danny and Julian, and you as well. So, mate, excited. Big things.
Hell yeah. And there's a episode down there, actually. Welcome to All Squares, Danny and Julian. What do they talk about in that episode?
Pretty much how it all started for them guys. So they give the full spiel, the full All Squares spiel, and a bit of an outline of what community lead is, and a lot about whiskey. So it's actually... You get a real insight into Danny and Julian in that episode. So straight after Hayley, check out that one for sure.
Yeah, hell yeah. Sweet. Well, welcome to the team, Lockie. Excited to have you. Been an awesome first week. Obviously, onboarding remotely is a weird thing, but like many people, we all got to get used to it. But hopefully soon enough, we'll be back in the office.
100%, mate. Can't wait to give you a cuddle.
On top of that, jump on YouTube, type in All Squares. We've got all the Product Hackers episodes recorded on there. So, free content, free education, awesome heads of products, product leads from Melbourne companies as well, sharing their stories and insights. So jump on there, awesome content. And last but not least, things are firing up. We actually got a lead product manager role on there. So jump on allsquares.com.au, got some roles, feel free to chat. Find out a little bit more about the market, but things are heating up. So super excited about this one. But last but not least, finally keen to jump onto this episode of Product Hackers. Sav, take it away, mate.
Cool, mate. Thank you.
No worries.
So is this number 7 for us?
Yeah, this is number 7.
Feels like such a long time ago, because I remember our last one was actually our last physical one was at a Cloud Guru.
Yeah.
Everyone was, I think there was like 60, 70 people there. We had beers afterwards.
So good.
That just seems like, and it was summer. It's almost summer again, I think.
Yeah.
So it's a long time ago, but I'm glad we started this. I really look forward to it every second week. It's very easy to just throw yourself into your work and wake up at 4 a.m, and that's what I do. And sit at your laptop, and then it's 7 p.m, and you're sitting at your laptop, and nothing's really changed. And so every 2 weeks we have this. Is a great chance to learn from people that have some really great experiences, and today's no exception. I particularly like this subject because my wife actually, and a little plug for her business, runs a little sustainable fashion business called Bondi Legs, and we often look at her e-commerce site and her products and talk about how she's differentiating and how she's telling her story, and how we can get people to engage better through digital channels as well as make it easy for them through physical channels. Like, in COVID, it's not very easy to try on clothes, for example. So like, how can we make that process a bit easier? So we're often chatting a lot about those topics. So I'm really happy that we've lined this one up in terms of product and e-commerce and what it takes to stand out. And I think it's timely as well, because over the coming months, there's so many of those days. I think they stack them all at the end of the year, where you've got Singles Day, Cyber Monday, Black Friday. Like, I don't know, there's just so many. And actually, funny note is an amazing note, actually. Last year, I was speaking to Gartner about various things, basically volumes of data being processed. And they told me about Singles Day and how Alibaba obviously grossed $38.4 billion, I think, last year on one single day. And that I'm going to get this wrong, but their average transactions per second was close to 200,000 transactions per second. I think it was actually in excess of that. So it's amazing what sort of volume e-commerce sites are doing these days. So today we're going to hear from three really experienced people. We're going to start with Josh, Haley, and Tony. We're going to start with Josh, who's the head of digital product and strategy at Workwear Group. He's got a really interesting background in service design and innovation and tech and product management. So he's got a really broad experience that allows him to be an awesome head of product. So I'll let you take it away, mate.
Cool, thanks, Sav. I might just share my screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. Okay, share. Okay, so I'm hoping if we get a thumbs up from someone that you can see my, perfect. Awesome, cool. So I've taken a slightly different tact. I thought I'd talk a little bit today about the landscape of what we're seeing in e-comm in 2020. It has been an unusual year and there's been some unusual trends. As Sav mentioned, I've got a really sort of different type of background, currently a head of product. I've had a bit of background in a few startups, some successful, some terribly unsuccessful. I love a good experiment and I certainly love product management. For a little bit of context, Workwear Group are essentially Australia's largest uniform provider. If you can name the industry or the business, we probably put a uniform on their back. So that's the one part of our business, but the other part is more of our consumer-facing brands, some iconic brands that I look after: Hard Yakka, King G, and Stubby. So, and I look after all the e-commerce across that. So today, what I'm going to talk a little bit about is what's been happening. What are some of the trends that we're seeing? Who's been set up to sort of win, and then what are we sort of expecting? And this goes to that point about how do you differentiate yourself? What are the things that we need to be mindful of in these sort of in these strange times? So I'm mindful of time, that I don't want to eat into anyone else's time, but it's kind of a tale of two lockdowns. Now, if we go back to the beginning of the year and we think back to where were we seeing growth in e-comm, it was, quite frankly, there was some weird shit. Basically we had things like hand sanitizers. This is a list that I managed to pull up from Google back in March. Digital artwork was increasing. People were buying things. Camping trailers. I don't know if that was doomsday preppers. But then we see the first really interesting insight that we see is that we're seeing growth in webcams. And this is the first hint that people's behaviors and how they're working is starting to change. People are starting to work from home, hence they're starting to buy webcams. or they're into other stuff. I don't know. But moving sort of fast forward to now, and August, September, what are we starting to see? We're starting to see a bit of a change in people's buying behaviors online. Notably, the one that's growing at the moment, really strange, is outdoor prefabricated kitchens, if that was a thing. Things like alcoholic flavored beverage, everyone loves getting on that. Gym equipment, obviously the gyms are closed. Roller skates, people picking up new hobbies, model making, and a really random one, candle making kits. I didn't even know it was a thing, but we're seeing growth in all these unusual areas. So it's very hard to predict what's going to be successful, what types of products will be successful at the moment. And hats off to anyone that's managed to pick those. I guess bringing this sort of back to what I've been seeing at Workwear Group, we'd be considered the sort of the top end of town in terms of our e-commerce offering. We have fairly large volumes of customers, but we saw some really interesting changes in demographic behavior. So when the pandemic sort of started in the first sort of 4 or so months, we saw a bit of a shift in our demographics and who was buying from us. We saw growth, interestingly enough, in the 18 to 24-year-olds that were purchasing with us. And we couldn't quite work that out. And then we saw a drop off between our sort of 25 to 55-year-olds, which are usually, I would call them our baseline customers. And then strangely, again, we started seeing growth at the other end of our demographics. So our customers over 65 years. And we were sort of trying to work out what's going on here. What is actually happening? And what we realized through doing some customer research is the 18 to 24-year-old demographic for us was still very much footloose, fancy free, basically what global pandemic? I'm going to spend all the money that I get. I don't really care. So they continued spending, and if not increased their spending, it might have been out of boredom as well. The 25 to 55-year-olds certainly started to retract their spending, and this is they're more cost conscious about spending money that they may need for later on, saving for that rainy day. And then we had the other end, which is our over 65-year-olds. That segment grew for us, and that was really interesting. It was because most of them, it was coming off a low base to begin with, but that part of our segment, really, it was the first time for them transacting in e-commerce. So this is a shift in behavior. They're customers that would traditionally go to a bricks and mortar store to pick up some King G or hard yakka. They've come to us because those stores are now closed. I guess this was a really interesting sort of, at least I found it interesting, just the weeks ranked 1 to 5, what we've seen over the last 12 months in terms of growth. And Sav called out before Black Friday and how some of those are back-ended. If you look here, the second biggest week in the last 12 months up to August was actually Black Friday. But then if you sort of fast forward, and you can see where the pandemic starts to happen, and this is online purchases up to August. So you can actually see that people start to shift their behavior to e-commerce and to online. And that sort of peaks around Easter, and then we see the restrictions start to ease, it drops off, and then lo and behold, the restrictions, stage 3 kicks in, stage 4, and then we see this massive uplift in e-commerce and online sales. Now, I guess that is across all of Australia. It's not necessarily linked to just one state, but I thought it was worth calling out Victoria because in the last 12 to 16 weeks, we've seen the biggest weeks of online sales that we've seen in the last 12 months. So you can see right around August, late June, July, August, we've seen the biggest weeks in online purchasing behaviour from across Victoria. No surprises there. We're obviously in the midst of lockdown, so it's a lot of people's preference to buy online. Shifting a little bit, so who have been some of the big winners and big losers? And I thought I'd talk a little bit about this, about who's been set up to succeed and who are really, really struggling. So one of the call outs is the commercial real estate market. We're all doing this meeting from home at the moment. It was called out early on in the piece that the pandemic has been likely the biggest devaluation in commercial real estate value to date, meaning that there's a lot of people that are now going to work from home. So there's no need to have 2,000 seats in an office in the city. Online travel bookings, obviously with no travel, there's no bookings. So guys like Webjet are definitely going into survival mode. From a clothing trade perspective, there's certainly been a retraction in consumer spend at the top end of the market in the luxury brands. We've seen that retract a little bit. Middle market though, which is quite interesting, we're still seeing fairly high basket sizes at checkout for that mid-market type customer. And then the other call out is platforms like REA. There's just less stock on the market. They're calling out as well that essentially back in, I think a couple of weeks ago, we would normally have about 1,000 auctions on a weekend happening in Victoria. There was 20 and it had a clearance rate of 0. So they didn't sell a single one of those. So clearly online as a channel to sell houses, when people can't inspect the house, not going so great. But then I thought I'd talk a little bit about who the winners are. And some of these are e-commerce specialists and stalwarts like Kogan. Like they have always been the challenger brand that's always been set up for e-commerce. They're up 40%. And I think one of the call outs, unless you've been living under a rock, Rosalind Kogan has been very aggressive in the marketing at the moment to try and gain as much market share as possible. Without doubt, he realizes that this is a gold rush for his business. The same with JB Hi-Fi, but Kogan very, very aggressive in targeting customers and getting them onto their e-commerce platform. I guess, and that has to do with consumer behavior, spending more time at home. Those niggly things like the fridge making a bit of noise is driving people to upgrade their appliances like they haven't before. JB Hi-Fi is also doing really, really well. They can't get enough stock in the country. Bunnings is a really interesting one. People doing up their gardens and their homes. They're expecting to decline, but they've had, for some reason, obviously people renovating their homes, but they've had a bit of growth. They've had about 20% growth, and that's come from a combination of, if you recall, the big crowds at Bunnings, but also their online offering. They were well positioned to do that as they invested about 24 months ago in their e-commerce channels. And then AusPost, obviously people need their stuff delivered. Click and collect isn't for everyone, but AusPost are saying that it's basically like Christmas every week for the last few months. So they've also invested in their e-commerce and their digital offerings for customers as well. So e-comm, what's next? I think what we're going to continue to see, at least what we're experiencing, is that we'll see the banks try and shift more customers to online only. We suspect that they're going to close a number of branches, and this will be the final push to get more customers over to digital channels. The question that we have at Workwear Group is whether or not we'll see some of our segments adopt digital channels and e-commerce ongoing, or whether or not this will just be a halo effect and that they'll revert back to old behaviors of going back to bricks and mortar stores. So we're sort of watch this space a little bit at the moment. And we kind of expect that the basket size, although it's been growing, to start to shrink in our e-commerce. A lot of that we think is buoyed by people having things like JobKeeper and Access. They're flush with cash, they're spending it online out of boredom. So we expect that maybe in Q2 2021 that we'll start to see some decline there. A couple of takeaways, I guess, that I would think about that I've seen is that businesses that are able to pivot really quickly have done really well, and they're able to leverage their investment in e-commerce. The other thing that I would certainly recommend is to minimize your risk. Don't go all in on buying a shipping container of hand sanitizer, test the market. We've got the e-commerce channels to test whether or not your customers will buy from you before you make a significant investment. There are horror stories of people buying, shipping containers of toilet paper and being stuck with it, can't sell it. And then the last one is there's a real opportunity to enhance your customer experience in these times. Expect things like augmented reality to be really popular with customers in the future, chatbots, enhancing that customer experience. And the other one that's rising at the moment, if you haven't already got it, things like multiple payment methods are just starting to be just expected from customers. So this is things like your Afterpays and Zip and those sorts, buy now, pay later. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to the next speaker.
Thanks, mate. I actually, I was just listening to what you're saying, and I think, you mentioned Bunnings, JB Hi-Fi, Kogan. I think that there's also another, and I love the way in which you use data. I think there's another really interesting thing that's going on, which is I think about $30 billion has been exited from super funds, and people are getting, their payments for, what do you call it? Job seeker and job keeper. And I really think that some of that money, and anecdotally, I've done a bit of a survey in Queensland on what people are using their super for when they exit it. And a number of people are using it for plastic surgery, which is probably a non-essential spend, but wow. There you go. So that's one play. And I also think that JB Hi-Fi, Bunnings, Kogan, they're also benefiting from the fact that when people work from home, a lot more becomes taxable. So they're just spending like crazy because they know it's part of their tax claim at the end of the year. So
absolutely.
Yeah, some really interesting things going on. That was awesome. I love the graphs as well. Are they publicly available? Or is that sort of?
Yeah, I got a few of those from Australia Post who put out a couple of reports lately. But yeah, I can share some links to those.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So the next speaker is Hayley, and Hayley is the founder of the Sheet Society, which is a growing, really successful startup. She's going to be speaking to us about a point which Josh left off on, which is augmented reality. So I'll leave it with you, Hayley.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sam. I'm excited to be here. So just wanted to talk today just a little bit about the business. So the Sheet Society, we sell bedding and sheets online. So we like to approach buying sheets as in you kind of filling up your sheet wardrobe. So, expressing your personal style through the way you dress your bed. So we encourage customers to mix and match our sheets. We've got a range of colours across cotton and linen. You can really just buy separates and start building the bed of your dreams, we say. So I wanted to kind of talk about our experience this year. I guess the key word this year is pivot, and I hate to use that word. But yeah, we've had a really good opportunity to still be quite relevant in the market during this time. A lot of people are obviously spending more time at home. So we've really benefited from people trying to revamp their space and, turning their bedroom into a bit more of a sanctuary. So we've seen huge figures this year since COVID, which has been great. It's kind of just right place, right time. And because we've always been sort of a pure play online retailer, we're really well set up to pick up that extra traffic. So last year we launched our interactive bed builder, and it's a configurator on our website that allows you to view a 3D render of your bed, and you're able to drop in different colours, different textures, different sizes, add 4 pillows, take off a euro, mix up your quilt cover, so you can kind of visualise what you're shopping before you're buying it, because I know it can be a bit daunting to kind of put colours and textures together, and especially from an online business, you kind of want to see and touch and feel the fabrics that you're buying, and that was a real struggle with us because sheets are such a tactile product. We really wanted that experience online to really speak true about the products that we're designing. So yeah, we opened our first store literally like 5 days before COVID hit. So we worked our asses off over Christmas to really, launch that offline experience so we could give our customers in Melbourne that tactile experience. And I remember putting the sign on the wall, "Come on in Melbourne, we're open," and getting a message from our PR agency being like, "Oh, this thing's kicking off. Are you sure you want to do that?" So yeah, we closed the doors. I think like 5 days later. So whilst it was really disappointing at the time, it really enabled us to think, okay, cool, we are able to be quite reactive in this environment. So what do we need to do to stand out from the rest and provide that experience without having people in the store? So with our bed builder tech, we worked with a local designer just in Melbourne that do augmented reality. We're able to put together an augmented reality situation, and we turned that around within a few months, which is really exciting. So I'll share a video of how it works. So hopefully you guys can all see this. Cool. Down. So the way we were able to do this is first with our 3D bed builder. So to build the configurator that we needed to, we had to move over to Shopify Plus, and we had to, completely redesign the product functionality. So that was the first step of this program, and then we built it out in AR. So I guess a lot of brands and businesses are utilising AR, but what we're seeing is just kind of like that object in that space. So, you're looking at a vase and you're able to look at that vase in your home. The thing that made our experience really different was it's a configurator as an AR. So the tech that we built is first of its kind, we think, in the world. So in the browser, we're able to click view in AR, and the link between the two systems actually pulls from, I think it's around 21 quadrillion available combinations, and renders your selection in AR in under a second right in the browser. So that's something we're super proud of. And at the moment, it's just a little bit of fun, obviously, but yeah, it gives the customer that opportunity to visualize what their combination will look like in their space before purchasing. So it's a great example of how we've been able to pivot and really build out our brand in that AR space. Like one of our key brand values is the ability to express your own personal style through what you're purchasing for us. So being able to see those combinations in real life has been really exciting. So yeah, we launched it a couple of months ago and it's going so well. So yeah, that's kind of all from me. But yeah, I'd love to answer any questions anyone has, or yeah, happy to chat.
Hey Hayley, how did you come up with that idea?
You know what? We were just kind of chatting one day, and we'd wanted to do this bed builder for so long because it was such a key part of telling our brand story. So that's been in works for, I'd say, maybe 2 years. We're in our 3rd year of business at the moment, so it was something we wanted to do quite early. And then once we launched that, we were kind of like, wow, imagine if we could do this in AR. And it was kind of a bit of a joke at the time. And through the power of networking, I reached out to a few of my friends that are in the industry, and I said, hey, do you actually know anyone that can help with this AR piece of work? And yeah, I was introduced to someone that one of our store designer met at a wine bar in Carlton, and he was able to help us. So it was awesome to keep all of that being made in Melbourne, which is something that we're really proud of. So it just goes to show if you've got a dream, just put it out there and something can come back.
That's awesome. I've actually seen this a little bit, like really innovative use of AR. It was my sister-in-law works at a sunglasses company, and they've done something similar as well, where you sort of take a selfie of yourself and you can choose which sunnies are on you.
Yeah, cool.
Which is really good as well. We've got
I actually, just a quick one. There's a company in the US called Blue Nile, and it has one of the finest. It sells diamond engagement rings online. And if you ever go out and check it out, it is one of the most phenomenal stores in terms of building your own diamond you could ever possibly find. It sells about $250 million worth of engagement rings each year.
Right. There you go. What's it called? Blue Nile?
Blue Nile. And
Um,
once you've done it, it gives you HD pictures of your diamond. It's fantastic.
I'm just thinking of it. Oh, well, we've got you then, Tony. So I think it's over to you now. Anyway, so Tony's got a great background. He's founded a startup in logistics. And now he's at Catch Group or catch.com.au as a senior product manager. He's going to talk to us about some of his background in startup and logistics. Take it away, man.
Cool. No, thanks, Sammy. I'm on the iPad today, so Sammy will have to drive for me. I guess my background, I've spent a fair few years in e-comm and logistics. I co-founded a company called Fulfillio a few years back with Australia Post Corporate Venture Capital, and we became a fulfillment by eBay partner back, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. And that was a fantastic ride in terms of e-comm logistics and growth in that market. The other part was Yellow Pages. I ran Yellow Pages for a little while, the online directories marketplace, and finally now I'm at Catch. And one of the things I really liked all throughout is I'm probably a bit strange for a product manager, in that most of my experiences originally before going into product was all in economics and in accounting. So I wanted to put some behavioral economics together for people. I'll go to the next slide, Sammy. Sammy asked me to put a war story together of one of my startups, and Fulfillio was the best one. For about 3.5 months, we actually double shipped our first customers' orders. So each time an order came in from Shopify, we would accidentally ship 2 of them versus 1 of them. For about 3 odd months, we became Australia Post became the largest buyer of face masks of that company anywhere that quarter. So we ended up, and for your information, of the 500 shipments that we double shipped, only 1 of them came back online and wrote how happy they were about obtaining a second version, a double shipment. So they certainly weren't complaining online about getting double shipped. Next slide. I wanted to talk about online commerce because behaviorally there's 2 really funny things in economics about online commerce, and I've put this as, we find these truths to be self-evident, that all customers hate paying for shipping and they love pricing, range and content. And I wanted to kind of investigate a little bit further from a bit of my background, a bit of a behavioral economics background, why that's the case. And we'll start with shipping, because that is always the largest bugbear of customers. Next slide, Sammy. Why do customers hate paying for shipping? You know, it's a cost that businesses have to put in. But why do they hate it? Well, the reason is a lot of research indicates that consumers actually evaluate prices sequentially, and they judge the fairness of each price individually. They don't judge the fairness of the whole product price. They actually judge the fairness of each price individually and in context. So if I break down a coffee order, if I were to break it down into coffee beans, milk, water, and service, and most of your coffee is, you know, the largest component is labor. If you were to break it down there, a consumer there would look at that and say, is this fair? Is this fair? Is this fair on every single component, and judge that in context of what they see in market. Now, the problem with shipping and the problem with things like ticket surcharges is that, well, shipping's free on Amazon. And so the context for a lot of consumers now is that particular charge is unfair in their minds. And so that the rise of kind of free shipping, there's no such thing as free shipping, is included in the price, has come about because more and more customers look at those ancillary charges and they judge it in the context of the market. We'll go next slide. And finally, I want to talk about, why consumers love content, range, return policies, things like that. This is kind of a traditional model of economics. You've got price and quantity, and if you drop your price, you sell more and things like that. Well, Amazon and Catch Group and these huge behemoths have reduced the prices on pretty much everything we know, down to as little as they can. And the interesting thing is that consumer surplus, therefore, has to come in ways that aren't price related. So they include content, range, media, returns policies, shipping policies, express, the lovely AR bed builder that Haley's built, great design. All of these things are what are creating the modern kind of consumer surplus that you see on quite a few standalone websites. And because price is becoming more and more difficult to differentiate because of large marketplaces. And so every time we talk about being much more consumer focused within e-commerce, it's really about growing that consumer surplus, and the higher that is, the more that you as a producer can charge for your goods. That's about all from my end. I wanted to talk finally about the pace of growth in e-commerce, and we've really seen a decade's worth of change in more or less circa 6 months. If you look at the step change in how customers are shopping, how many people are taking that as so how many people are starting with e-commerce as their first port of call in terms of looking at products. There's been a real step change over the last 6 months, and it would have taken 5 to 10 years in the old world to kind of drive that. I think coming back out of it is going to be really interesting to see how much customers actually value bricks and mortar. Because once you've gone online, the search cost to find a product, the time that it takes to find a product and compare a product is very low. And I suspect a lot of older consumers and first-time online shopping converts are going to find a good share of their wallet being dominated by online going forward. So that's all from me, Sammy. I'm happy to take questions.
Hey, Tony, I love that. And you can definitely tell you're an economist as well. So my question's more economics based. There's this, what are your thoughts around pent up demand and the fact that there seems to be pent up demand in the market? And if shops and bricks and mortar stores open up, do you think that pent up demand will sort of leave the online channels and go physical because they just haven't had that in a while?
I think that you're going to get a massive surge back in real estate and webjet. I think the minute travel restrictions are lifted, the flights are going to be booked out for years and years going at this rate. I know. There's a lot of pent-up demand. So if you look at the drop in consumer spending, which was circa 10-15%, and the jump in the savings rate, which was circa 20%. There's a lot of dry powder sitting around in households that, quite frankly, haven't been able to consume. Right? They haven't been able to go to restaurants and go on their holidays, and that's going to find itself somewhere. And I suspect what you're going to find is the unfortunate part of this thing is it's actually hit a lot of blue collar workers, service industry workers, a lot harder than it has hit IT or knowledge industry workers. I reckon you're going to get a nice jump up in high end out car sales and high end bed sheets, hopefully, Hayley, and high end luxury goods. I think people are just sitting there waiting to spend once they have the chance to.
And what about I've seen during this pandemic, obviously people have shifted some of their business models. Like, I'll give you an example. The food store Rolled, the Vietnamese food store, and I was in IGA and I sort of saw all their stock in IGA, because obviously they're not opening a lot of their branches, so they're pushing their stock into IGA and selling it through that channel. I thought that's quite interesting, because in the UK they do this all the time. Do you think that that's something that's going to stick around, or once the pandemic is finished, quote unquote, I'm not really sure when that'll be, that they'll go back to having a direct channel?
I think sales channels, once you find one, are very, very difficult to turn off. So you'll find that even if it yields 5 to 10 sales, most businesses will be very, very reticent to cut any kind of revenue off post-pandemic. So there'll be a migration off, but I think a lot of them will keep as much as they can.
Cool. Rightio, so we've got a lot of questions. I'm just going to walk through them all. First one, I think, was for you, Hayley. A number of questions about the augmented reality app. Firstly, just around how you went about building it. Did you actually have to build the tech behind it? How did you mentioned how you found the right person, but there's also a question on, like, is something like that very expensive? You don't have to share details, but like cheap or expensive would be enough. I'm sure they'd be happy with that. Yeah, all of those things.
Yeah, cool. Well, it kind of had the two parts to it. So the first part was the builder, and that's the back end of it. So that says to our Shopify store, okay, you clicked on this option, this option, this option, and then add them all to the cart as individual products. And I think anyone who's kind of tried to hack around the back of a Shopify store would know that, it looks like it's got all the bells and whistles, but then when you try and do something custom, there's just these little niggling things that stand out to you. So the issue we had with Shopify initially was that you could only have 3 variants per product, and we wanted to have a quilt cover, a fitted sheet, a flat sheet, and a pillowcase pair. So it meant initially that we could only have 3. So we had to have a sheet set and we had to have a quilt cover set. So at the start, that kind of directed our traffic accordingly. And then we couldn't kind of create a bundle with that Shopify. So we had to create a SKU code for each of the available potential options that a customer would want to buy to enable them to purchase different sizing of these different products. So we'd have to create a SKU code for like a king flat sheet, a single fitted sheet, and like 1 pillowcase pair. And even though some of those configurations would have never been purchased because they're all a bit out of whack, for it to look good for the user, we had to build that into the back end. So that's how we kind of hacked it on our basic $79 Shopify plan for the first year or so. And that's why the functionality around building that bed builder was so important to our business, because it got to a stage where we were linking it to our inventory management system that we're using called Dear Inventory, and because there were so many SKUs flying back and forth, like our API calls were just off tap, and it was click frenzy a couple of years ago, like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and we weren't doing that many sales, but it was just because the systems were trying to talk to each other so much. We really struggled with that. So it was important for us to find the right dev team to build that core functionality from the back end, even before we start talking about like the user experience of that functionality. So when we found a dev partner, we really needed to know that they had that kind of bundle mentality, and there's kind of off-the-shelf apps that you can use it through Shopify, but none of them were kind of what we wanted. So I wouldn't say it was expensive, but yeah, the key thing was finding someone that had done that before. So it wasn't a foreign thing, and then kind of making that look good on the other end was the first start of that. And then when we talk to the AR side of things, I wouldn't wouldn't say that that was overly expensive either. Like if you find the right person for the right job, that is exactly what you need, and you've got a clear enough brief, I think that's where you see some real wins.
That's amazing that you hacked that together with the $79 Shopify plan. That is very, very interesting and good to hear. There's a couple of more questions here. One was around your business currently, how you found, some of the challenges you find with it now, scaling versus your first couple of years. Maybe just talking to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess at the start, like the key to being a really good entrepreneur or a person starting a business is that you can wear so many different hats. And so, I'm in the back end of Shopify, I'm creating all those SKU codes, but I'm also kind of developing product with our suppliers and, making sure our branding's on point. I shot the first campaign on my iPhone, and I'm editing photos, and I'm creating EDMs and things like that. So you need to be a bit of an all-rounder. And it was like that for the first couple of years. And now it's completely different. We've gone from, I think I had 4 staff at our Christmas party last year, and this year we'll probably have 25. So it's a lot of change in a 12-month period, which is really exciting. But then, and me kind of, as the head of the business, I'm kind of divvying up these hats and, letting go of roles and bringing people in and taking them along for the ride. So yeah, it's a complete different business. And the challenges are completely different, but I think having the early on challenges of have I got the right product market fit, is this going to work, do I have a viable business, those really tough days kind of set you up for what we're dealing with now. And it's just so awesome to bring some really good staff onto the team this year. I think we've onboarded like 8 really amazing full-time staff since COVID, so that's been a bit tricky, but it's really set us up for the stage we're in now. So really scaling for growth. Just signed on to a new warehouse that's 10 times as big as we've got currently. So yeah, we're trying to get all our systems and stuff in the back end ready for us to just kick ass this year and in the Black Friday sales.
That is awesome. Really happy to hear that. One of the things that I want to touch on, and I might direct this one to Josh as well, is obviously, Hayley, as you all build, branding is one way to differentiate as well, right? And so I just want to touch on that and what people could do to really get their brand out there, to differentiate their brand, and for people to remember their brand. Like if I think about Hard Yakka, I'm sure we all have a song that's going on in our mind for Hard Yakka. So like, what are some of the things that you're doing to get your brand recognized and out there and remembered?
You go first, Josh.
Yeah.
That was such a good intro. Look, Hard Yakka is a really iconic brand. I think one of the things that we're starting to do with some of our brands is the way that we're positioning them in our video content across our social channels. So the marketing team's been really careful to understand the sort of the target audience that we're trying to trigger and that we're trying to approach. So being really clever and investing in rich digital content has been something that's getting our brand out there, getting traction through some of those social media channels. Plus we're starting to put our brand in just different places, that doing sponsorships and things that we wouldn't normally do in other parts of the business. So our uniforms business has just recently done a sponsorship with I think it's called Frontliners. Now, those guys essentially are frontline health workers. We've done a partnership with them with one of our other brands, and that's just kicked off. But that's an example of putting your brand in places that you might not necessarily think of.
Tony, Hayley, you guys?
Yeah, well, I guess we've got a really interesting product because, you know, we've got a commodity product, like you need sheets. And so what we're doing with our branding is really turning it into something that you want. So turning a need into a want. And we're doing that through the fashion side of what we offer. And then, you know, having control of our own product that we design and develop has really meant that we can, you know, hone in on what our customer really wants. So our fitted sheets are super deep sides, and we've got a custom elastic band that's super thick along the bottom edge. So really like using design to really showcase, you know, the product and tell the story of the brand, which is, you know, it's fuss free, it's easygoing, you know, we're trying to make it casual. So yeah, making a difference through product has really been a core driver for our brand. And then just being really customer focused, like, you know, free shipping has always been something we've offered since day one. We've got a great customer service team. Yeah, so we know at the end of the day, we want to keep those customers on board. And, you know, for a commodity product, you know, when we launched, we kind of thought, you know, people buy sheets like maybe once a year, maybe twice if they're feeling a bit lucky. But, you know, we've found that people are coming back to us, you know, within 60 days, and we've got like a 30% customer return rate. So that's huge for us on something that, you know, we didn't think that we would see further return from that in 12 months. So yeah, they're those key things that we're doing to drive our brand forward.
Oh, I think I'll talk a bit of, I guess, my experience at Yellow. Yellow Pages is still a brand that you remember despite, you know, so many years down the track, right? Yeah, it's 30 years since it was anything that was big. And I think there's a reason for that. The first one is, you know, digital content, digital channels are incredibly good for building a following of your brand within a certain niche. But as within a certain niche, and the customers are loyal to you and it will come back to you and talk about you, there is unfortunately no substitute for a massive TV campaign with a well-paid creative and a good tune for getting into the consciousness of broader Australia. You know, and that's probably the approach that you've seen across the board with the marketplaces now. Catch now has suddenly sprung into the consciousness of everyone because there's an ad on TV every single night. Same with, you know, Amazon and Kogan there. So I put it. I always talk about Yellow Pages because we think about it now as a very, you know, but don't forget that brand had probably circa $1 billion pumped into marketing in the years of 1980 to about 1999. That doesn't just go away, you know, that doesn't just go away from people's consciousness very quickly. So it's really interesting to see how long, once you've built a good brand, how long it persists. But it's bloody expensive to build a really good brand.
Hey, Tony, I'm going to shift tact a little bit and talk about free shipping. There's just like so many questions here about shipping, which I knew there would be because me and my wife have this discussion all the time. And I know for her products, she offers free shipping as well, like Hayley mentioned. One of the questions here is around like, yeah, free shipping is a very broad concept, but if you want, for example, if you're going out and you wanted a dress tonight, should you be able to charge for that shipping? Like it's an enhanced level of service. What are your thoughts around that?
The speed is definitely something you can charge for, but I'll caveat that at the moment. People are charging for speed because at the moment it's unique. It's really hard to get to more than 10% of the Australian population at speed, or 20%, you know, in each city. There's a huge regional portion that you can't get to, that are quite active buyers of product. And so, you know, same day delivery, very, very useful. When we at Fulfillio, we did it with Frank Body. We did a huge PR campaign with them. Extremely successful for that metro, you know, want it quick. They can obviously, they're obviously willing to pay a bit more. But when you think about the broad range of Australia out in the regions, $15 shipping out to Geelong, or $20 out to somewhere out in WA. That really starts to hit you when you're at a $20 or $30 product, which is why you're seeing large warehouse builds across the country as people try and close down, as e-tailers try and close down the distances to their customers.
Yeah, really interesting. Hayley, you mentioned, didn't you, that you've offered shipping free since the start, did you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the first few weeks of launching, I charged for shipping, and then I found that because we're a digital business, we're spending a lot of money on acquiring that customer digitally, and because we've got all the stats there, we know on average, for example, it could cost us $30, $35, $40, $50 to acquire that customer. And if they're dropping off at the checkout over $9.95 shipping, like that's just insane. So we pulled that very quickly and just offered the free shipping. But I think it's a really interesting thing because, the customers are expected to get it right away, but it really depends on the relationship that you have with your customer. We relaunched our corduroy product this season for winter and pretty much launched it on pre-order with a 4 to 6 week lead time, and it's been one of our most successful products. And people were happy to wait because they really wanted it. So yeah, I find it really interesting, the customers that really want it now and want it by the end of the day or want it next day, and the customers that are willing to wait like that 4 to 6 weeks time. So it depends on what you're selling and how you get that relationship with your customer if they're willing to wait.
Cool.
I call shipping the interest rates of the e-commerce world. You drop them down and you instantly see demand go up. The problem is there's only so much you can cut.
I like that.
Tony, a question to you though: do you guys look at the basket size for when you drop your shipping? One of the things that we face into with some of our brands is we were offering free shipping, but on small basket items like a pair of socks, if someone has just checked out for a pair of socks, it really eats into our margin. But what's your take on that?
I think the problem is that if you don't offer it, Amazon will most likely do it at some point, and so so you might as well take the hit to your margins and figure out how you can optimize your business to deliver that experience, rather than go the other way around, because consumers are, I've come from traditionally B2B businesses. Consumers are some of the best allocators of their own money you can find. There's it's really, really hard to acquire consumers, and they leave you very, very easily over small things. And so, to that extent, particularly at Catch, we've had a lot of debate internally around, how much to if any, to put that threshold up, because the higher it is, unfortunately, the more customers kind of drop out, and the more customers drop out, the longer term risk is that they go to someone like Amazon who has free shipping.
Yeah, I agree with Tony. We actually lose out if someone just buys a pair of pillowcases with the free shipping, but they may be buying a pair of pillowcases to try out the brand and to see if they like the product. So we've got an opportunity then to deliver it to them for free, delight them with the lead time, give them a handwritten note so that we can convert them to that bigger sale. So for us, it's worth it, definitely.
Yeah, I certainly subscribe to that way of thinking, right? You're looking at the customer from a lifetime value and acquiring them for the first time versus you losing money on a single transaction. If you're acquiring that customer, there's a very good likelihood, particularly with our workwear group brands, that if they like the product, they will come back, and we've acquired them hopefully for a long period of time, not just a pair of socks. Hopefully it's a whole kit for years to come. So yeah, I absolutely think along the same lines.
And I think it's always, we always think about shipping as eating into margins too, but customer acquisition is the killer, right? At 30, $50, you know, $9 free shipping is always seen as a cost, but in reality, like, it's quite cheap if you can acquire that customer with that free shipping compared to greenfield trying to get them off Google.
And then for them to shop again with you, that's free.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We're running out of time, but that's a really good point. Like, you know, the cost of customer acquisition compared to, you know, the lifetime value of the customer. You know, I think that if you're, I know from my wife's business, we often talk about this, and you know, you're trying to enter into a long-term relationship. So like that first purchase might not be profitable. You know, they might buy, in her business, they might buy a pair of underwear, and all of a sudden, like, you're not making anything, you're actually losing money, but it's a long-term relationship. You've acquired the customer, and it's about ensuring that relationship stays there, so you can, they'll continue to buy, and the lifetime value will be, you know, much greater than the CAC that you pay. It's been really awesome discussion. We really thank you. Hot topic as well during COVID. Hopefully most of Melbourne's not in lockdown in a month's time, and hopefully lots gets released on Sunday. We can only keep our fingers crossed. Thank you all for joining us, Josh, Hayley and Tony. Really lovely talking to you, and it was super interesting as well. And thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, Sammy and Lockie.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. This was a killer session.
See you later.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
So yeah, have a lovely weekend. Bye bye.
Hey guys, cheers.